So there's this huge political shift happening in Venezuela. But here's the big question. Could the shockwaves from that crisis actually topple the government in its closest ally, Cuba? Okay, let's dive into this argument and see just how tightly these two nations' fates are connected.
Let's start here with this really powerful statement from Venezuelan opposition leader María Corina Machado. She's talking about the pressure against the Maduro regime, calling it a historic turning point, a moment where, in her words, justice finally defeated tyranny. I mean, that really sets a dramatic stage, and as we're about to see, the aftershocks of this moment could travel far, far beyond Venezuela's borders.
And that's the core question we're tackling here. A potential power shift in Venezuela is one thing, but the ripple effects? They could be absolutely massive. So what exactly does all this mean for Cuba, a nation that has depended on Venezuela for decades?
To really get a handle on what this could mean for Cuba, we have to start with this turning point in Venezuela. The sources we're looking at point to a pretty specific prediction, one made at the very highest levels of government.
And here's that prediction. It comes from then-President Trump. Now, the idea here isn't about some direct U.S. military action or anything like that. No, it's this belief that the events unfolding in Venezuela would kind of naturally lead to the collapse of the Cuban government. So how exactly would that even work? Well, this brings us to the core of the whole argument, this idea of a domino effect hitting Cuba. Let's really break down the logic behind that forecast.
To really get to the heart of this, we're going to turn to the analysis of Joseph Hernandez, and his perspective is a big part of the source material we're looking at. See, he's the son of Cuban immigrants who fled the Castro regime, so his insights are shaped by a really, really personal history.
Okay, so this is the absolute lifeline between the two countries. For years, it was a pretty simple exchange, right? Step 1. Venezuela, which has tons of oil, sends that fuel to Cuba to keep its economy going. Step 2, in return, Cuba sends over professionals, we're talking doctors and even intelligence operatives, to prop up the Venezuelan regime. But here's the absolute game changer. Step 3, the argument is that this vital oil lifeline, it's been cut. It's stopped. And this quote from Hernandez just nails that point. He basically says, look, they just can't survive without Venezuela. Their whole economy was supported by them. So for him, it's not a question of if it will collapse, but when. It's just a matter of time.
But, Hernandez's perspective isn't just about geopolitics. It's way more personal than that. It's rooted in his own family's story of survival. To really understand why he's so convinced, you have to hear where he's coming from.
So his family story starts back when he was just 7 years old. That's when they fled Cuba, trying to escape the communist regime and find a better life. And you can tell that journey has defined his entire perspective.
And you gotta understand, the stakes for his family were just incredibly high. He shares this just harrowing detail about his father. His dad was a political prisoner, and it was so bad he ended up in a coma for months.
And after all that trauma, their new beginning was anything but easy. As he says, they came to America and started from nothing. It's that classic, tough immigrant story. His dad washing dishes, his mom cleaning houses, all built on pure resilience and the hope for a future they could never have back home. So, this whole personal history, it directly shapes how he sees life for people still in Cuba today, especially now that their main economic lifeline is basically crumbling.
And that brings us right back to today. If this analysis is right, if that Venezuelan oil that propped up the whole Cuban economy is gone, what on earth does that mean for the day-to-day lives of the people who actually live there?
Well, according to Hernandez, the picture is pretty grim. He talks about daily, long power shortages, the lights just going out. He points to a serious lack of food, especially protein, things like beef or chicken. People are basically forced to live on starchy foods. And then on top of all that economic misery, there's the prediction of continued political oppression.
Right, so beyond just the economic collapse, the argument also zooms in on the government itself, the political machine. And it looks at how it might react when it's cornered, which could lead to a pretty oppressive future, at least in the short term.
Yeah, a really key part of this prediction is that the Cuban government isn't just going to pack up and go home. Hernandez argues that their intelligence apparatus is incredibly sophisticated and effective. It's this powerful tool they have for keeping control, even while the country's economy is falling apart around them. And that leads to this final, pretty grim forecast from him. He doesn't see some quick, peaceful change. Nope. He actually predicts the regime will tighten its grip, leading to more oppression before there's any chance of freedom. Not, as he says, a pretty timeline.
So at the end of the day, we're left with this really powerful story, right? One man's escape from the past fueling this stark prediction about a nation's future. And it leaves us with a huge question.
Now that its main economic lifeline has been severed, is Cuba really on the brink of collapse? Or will the regime somehow find a new way to hang on? The answer, whatever it is going to shape the lives of millions.